The Complete Works of Swami Vivekananda, Volume 2, Chapter 15, The Atman, Its Bondage and Freedom. Lecture delivered in America. According to the Advaita philosophy, there is only one thing real in the universe, which it calls Brahman. Everything else is unreal, manifested and manufactured out of Brahman by the Maya. To reach back to the Brahman is our goal. We are each one of us that Brahman, that reality, plus with Maya. If we can get rid of this Maya or ignorance, and then we become what we really are. According to this philosophy, each man consists of three parts: the body, the internal organ, or three parts: the body, the internal organ or mind, and behind that, what is called the Atman, the self. The body is the external coating, and the mind is the internal coating of the Atma, who is the real perceiver, the real enjoyer, the being in the body who is working the body by means of internal organs of the mind. The Atman is the only existence in the human body which is immaterial. Because it is immaterial, it cannot be a compound. And because it is not a compound, it does not obey the law of cause and effect. And so it is immortal. That which is immortal can have no beginning because everything with the beginning must have an end. It also follows that it it must be formless. It also follows that it must be formless. There cannot be any form without matter. Everything that has form must have a beginning and end. We have none of us seen a form which had not a beginning and will not have an end. A form comes out of the combination of force and matter. This chair has peculiar form, that is to say a certain quantity of matter is acted upon by a certain amount of force and made to assume a particle shape or a particular shape. The shape is the result of the combination of matter and force and the combination of matter and force. The shape is a result of the combination of matter and force. The combination cannot be eternal. Thus must come to every combination a time when it will dissolve. So all form have a beginning and an end. We know a body will perish. It had a beginning and it will have an end. But the self, having no form, cannot be bound by law of beginning and end. It is existing from infinite time, just as time is eternal. So is the self of man eternal. Secondly, it must be all pervading. It is only form that is conditioned and limited by space. That which is formless cannot be confined in space. So, according to the Advait Vedanta, the self, the Atma in you, in me, in everyone is omnipresent. You are as much in the sun now as in this earth, as much in the England as in America. But the self acts through the mind and the body where they are. Its action is visible. Each work we do, each thought we think, produces an impression called in Sanskrit as samskara upon the mind, and the sum total of this impression becomes a tremendous force which is called as character. The character of a man is what he has created for himself. It is the result of the mental and physical actions that he has done on his life. The sum total of the samskaras is the force which gives a man the next direction after death. A man dies, the body falls away and goes back to the elements, but the samskaras remain, adhering to the mind which, being made of fine material, does not dissolve because the finer the material, the more persistence it is. But the mind also dissolves in the long run, and that is what we are struggling for. In this connection, the best illustration that comes to my mind is that of the whirlwind, different current of air coming from different direction meet and at the meeting point become united and go on rotating. As they rotate, they form a body of a dust, drawing in bits of paper, straws, etc. At one place, only two drop them. At one place, only to drop them and go on to another, and so go on rotating, raising and forming body out of materials which are before them. Even so, the forces called pran in Sanskrit come together and form a body and mind out of a matter and move on until the body falls down when they raise other materials to make another body, and when this falls another rises, and thus the process goes on. Force cannot travel without matter, so when the body falls down the mind stuff remains. Pran in the form of samskaras acting on it, and then it goes on to another point, raising up another will from fresh material and begins another motion, and so it travels from place to place until the force is all spent, and then it falls down and ended. So, when the mind will end, be broken to pieces eternally or entirely without leaving any samskaras. We shall be entirely free, and until that time, we are in bondage. Until then, the Atma is covered by the walls of the mind, and the images it is being taken from place to place. When the world falls down, the Atma finds that it is all pervading. It can go where it likes, is entirely free, and is able to manufacture any number of minds or bodies it likes. But until then, it can go only with the world. This freedom is the goal towards which we are all moving. Suppose there is a ball in this room, and we each have a mallet in our hands and begin to strike the ball, giving it hundreds of blows, driving it from point to point until at last it flies out of the room. With with what force, and in what direction will it go out? This will be determined by the forces that have been acting upon it all around the room. All the different blows that have been given will have their effect. Each one of our actions, mental, physical, is such a blow. The human mind is a ball which is been hit. We are being hit about this room of the world all the time, and out our passage out of it is determined by the forces of all these blows. In each case, the speed and direction of the ball is determined. In each case, the speed and direction of the ball is determined by the hit it has received, and so all our action in this world will determine our future birth. Our present birth, therefore, is the result of our past. This is one case. Suppose I give up an endless chain in which there is a black link and white link alternately without beginning and without end, and suppose I ask you the nature of the chain. At first, you will find a difficulty in determining its nature. The chain being infinite at both ends, but slowly you find out it is a chain. You soon discover that this infinite chain is a repetition of two links, black and white, and this multiplied infinitely becomes a whole chain. If you know the nature of one of these links, you know the nature of the whole chain because it is perfect repetition. All our lives, past, present, and future, forms as form as it were an infinite chain without beginning and without end, each link of which is one life with one end, birth and death. What we are and what do, there is been repeated again and again, with but little variation. So, if we know these two links, we shall know all the passages we shall have to pass through in this world. We see, therefore, that our passage into the world has been exactly determined by our previous passages. Similarly, we are in the world by our own actions. Just as we go out with the sum total of our present actions upon us, so we see that we come into with into it the sum total of our past actions upon us. That which takes us out is the very same thing that brings us in. What brings us in? Our past deeds. What takes us out? Our own deeds here. And so on. On we go. And so on we go. Like the caterpillar that takes the thread from its own mouth and builds its cocoon and at last finds itself caught inside the cocoon, we have bound ourselves by our own actions. We have thrown the network of our actions around ourselves. We have set the law of causation in motion and we find it hard to get ourselves out of it. We have set the wheels in motion and we are being crusade under it. So, this philosophy teaches us that we are uniformly being bound by our own actions, good or bad. The Atman never comes nor goes, it's never born nor dies. It is nature moving before the Atma, and the reflection of the motion is on the Atma. The Atman ignorantly think it is moving and not nature. When the Atman thinks that it is the bondage, but when it comes to find it never moves, that it is omnipresent. Then freedom comes. The Atma in bondage is called Jiva. The Atma in bondage is called Jiva. Thus, we see that when it is said that Atma comes and goes, it is said only for facility of understanding, just as for convening in the studying astrology, you are asked to suppose that the sun moves around the earth, though such is not the case. So the jiva, the soul, comes to higher or lower states. This is the well known law of reincarnation, and this law binds all creation. People in this country think it is too horrible that men should come up from an animal. Why? What will be the end of the millions of animals? Are they nothing? If we have a soul, so have they. And if they have none, neither have we. It is absurd to say that animal alone have it is absurd that to say that man alone has a soul and the animal none. I have seen men worse than animals. The human soul has sojourned in lower and higher forms, migrating from one to another according to the samskaras or impressions, but it is only in the highest form or has man that it attains to freedom. The form is higher than even the angel form, and of all forms it is the highest. Man is the highest being in creation because he attains to freedom. All this universe was in Brahman, and it was as it were projected out of him, and has been moving on to go back to the source from which it was projected. Like the electricity which comes out of the dynamo, completes the circuits and returns to it. The same is the case with the soul. Projected from Brahman, it passed through all the sort of vegetation and animal forms, and at last it is in man. And man is the nearest approach of the Brahman. To go back to Brahman, from which we have been projected, is the great struggle of life. Whether people know it or not does not matter. Whether people know it or not does not matter. In the universe, whatever we see of motion, of struggles in minerals or plants or animals, is an effort to come back to the center and be at rest. There was an equilibrium, and had that has been destroyed, and all parts and atoms and molecules are struggling to find their lost equilibrium again. In this struggle they are combining and reinforcing and reforming, giving rise to giving rise to all the wonderful phenomena of the nature. All struggles and the competitions in the animal life, plant life, and everywhere else, all social struggles and wars are but expression of that eternal struggle to get back to that equilibrium. The going from birth to death, this traveling is called as samskara in Sanskrit. The going from birth to death, this traveling is what called as samsara in Sanskrit. The round of birth and death literally. All creation passes through this round will sooner or later become free. The question may be raised that if we all shall come to freedom, why should we struggle to attain it? If everyone is going to be free, we will sit down and wait. It is true that every being will become free sooner or later. No one can be lost. Nothing can come to destruction. Everything must come up. If that is so, what is the use of our struggling? In the first place, the struggle is the only means that will bring us to center. And in the second place, we do not know why we struggle. We have to. Of thousands of men, some are awakened to the idea that they will become free. The vast masses of the mankind are content with the material things. But these are some who awaken and want to get back, who have had enough of this playing down here. This struggle consciously while the rest do it unconsciously. The alpha and omega of Vedant philosophy is to give up the world, giving up the unreal and making the real and taking the real. Those who are enamored of the world may ask, why should we attempt to get out of it, to go back to the center? All Suppose we have all come from God, but we find this world is pleasurable, nice, then why should we not rather try to get more and more of the world? Why should we try to get out of it? They say, improvements, look at the wonderful improvements going on in the world every day. How much luxury is being manufactured for it? This is very enjoyable. Why should we go away and strive for something which is not this? The answer is that the world is certain to die, to be broken into pieces, and that many times we have had the same enjoyment. All the forms, all the forms which we are seeing now have been manifested again and again, and the world in which we live have been here many times before. I have been here and talked to you many times before. You will know that it must be so, and the very words that you have been listening to now you have heard many times before, and many times more it will be the same. Souls were never different. The bodies have been constantly dissolving and recurring. Secondly, these things periodically occur. Suppose here are 3 or 4 dice, and when we throw them, one comes up 5, another 4. When we throw them, one comes up 5, another 4, another 3, another 2. If you keep on throwing, there must come times when those where same numbers will reoccur. Go on throwing, and no matter how long may be the interval, those numbers must come again. It cannot be asserted in how many throws they will come again. This is the law of chance. So, with souls and their association, however distant may be the period, the same combination and dissolution will happen again and again. The same birth, eating, drinking, and then the death come round again and again. Some never find anything higher than the enjoyment of the world, but those who want to soar higher find that this enjoyment are never final, are only by the way. Every form, let us say, beginning from the little worm and ending in man, is like one of the cars of the Chicago Ferris wheel, which is in motion all the time, but the occupant change. A man goes into the car, moves with the wheel, and comes out. The wheel goes on and on. A soul enters one form a soul enters one form, resides in it for a time, then leaves it and goes into another, and quits that again for a third. Thus, The round goes on till it comes out of the wheel and becomes free. Astonishing powers of reading the past and the future of man's life have been known in every country and every age. The explanation is that so long as the Atma is within the realms of causation, though its inherent freedom is not entirely lost and can assert itself, even to the extent of taking the soul out of the causal chain, as it does in the case of man who becomes free. Its actions its actions are greatly influenced by the causal law, and thus make it possible for men possessed with the insight to trace the sequence of effects, to tell the past and the future. So long as there is desire or want, it is sure sign that there is imperfection. A free being cannot have any desire. God cannot want God cannot want anything. If he desires, he cannot be God. He will be imperfect. So all the talk about God desiring this and that and becoming angry and pleased by the tones in baby's talk but means nothing. Therefore, it has been taught by all teachers. Desire nothing, give up all desires, be perfectly satisfied. A child comes into the world crawling and without teeth, and the old man gets out without teeth and crawling. A child comes into the world crawling and without teeth, and the old one gets out without teeth and crawling. The extremes are alike, but the one has no experience of life before him, while the other has gone through it all. When the vibration of either are very low, we do not see light. It is darkness. When very high, the result is also darkness. The extremes generally appear to be the same. The extreme generally appears to be the same, though one is as distant from the other as the poles. Though one is in distance from the other as the poles. The wall has no desires, no neither so neither has a perfect man. The wall has no desires, so neither has the perfect man. But the wall is not sentient enough to desire, while for the perfect man there is nothing to desire. There are idiots who have no desire in this world because their brain is imperfect. At the same time, the highest state is when we have no desires, but the two are opposite poles of the same existence. At the same time, the highest state is when we have no desires, but the two are opposite poles of the same existence. One is near the animal and the other is near the God.